All right, you unbeatables. It's time to dust off your starter jackets, rip off those tearaways, and blow into your game cartridges. I'm Sam Blandford.
I'm Pat Sellers.
I'm Simon Blandford.
And I'm Sean Kelly. And we wish it was the 90s. Welcome, dearest fans, friends, and Craig, back to the podcast, and the happiest of New Year's to you all.
He's back, Craig.
Greg's back. For how long?
Hey, speaking of New Year, at what point do you stop saying Happy New Year to somebody? Like, if you haven't seen someone for a month, is it okay to say Happy New Year to them?
Is that because this is releasing in Feb?
That's because we're recording this in Feb, Sean.
Yes. Day of, obviously.
This is live.
No, but seriously, can I say Happy New Year to someone like January 28th?
No way.
You're pushing
I
it.
thought so. Oh, what about, and Sam and Simon will probably appreciate this, you get back to, teachers obviously don't go back until mid to late Jan, and you get a lot of Happy New Years from your colleagues.
To quote the great Larry David, with all due respects, I think the Happy New Year window is closed.
Yeah, I agree. After about a week, I'm no more Happy New Year's from me.
Every single one of my work emails opens currently with a Happy New Year.
Then you have to reply with it as well.
All right, dear listeners, let me take you back to a time when People magazine's sexiest man alive was Patrick Swayze. Teen Spirit was a deodorant and a popular song. Callaway introduced the Big Bertha to the world.
Mm.
And the term carjacking was invented.
I've got a Big Bertha too, by the way.
Welcome to the Wish It Was the 90s Awards for 1991.
So topical.
So today we're going to go through 6 main categories: music, film, TV, gaming, sport, and history. And just a disclaimer, these are just our opinions, and we encourage you to share your opinions with us in the Slacks, but I just want you all to know right now that your opinions are wrong and we're right.
Spot on.
Without further ado, I think we'll jump into the music category, and there are two sections. We'll start with the first one. What's going to happen is we're all going to discuss our picks and then hopefully come to a consensus or not. Doesn't really matter. No one's actually getting any awards. So the first category is Best Single of 1991. Let's start with you, Sam.
So, being 2 years old at the time, a lot of this music I discovered later in life.
I asked Shah what she thought of for her picks for 91, and she just looked me dead in the eye and said I wasn't born. Sorry, Sam, as you were.
I have got, there were quite a few honourable mentions, which we'll get to later, but mine was probably not one of my really favourite songs, but probably a bit of, I know a lot of people love this song and this band, but Smells Like Teen Spirit, Nirvana.
Solid pick. Fair and reasonable. Patrick?
I went for the track Other People's Pussy by Naughty by Nature, also known as OPP. It's a provocative song. Samples the Jackson 5's ABC, and outside of being an absolute banger, it was a bit later than 91, obviously, but I remember this being one of the first songs I downloaded on LimeWire.
Ooh.
Nice.
Not a Napster,
allegedly.
Man.
Is that still illegal?
Yeah.
Allegedly downloaded it then on LimeWire.
Yeah, you know me.
Your pick, Simon.
Oh, your last homie, I think.
But I think when it comes to 1991, when it comes to best single, you need to have a good chat about the background and the zeitgeist at the time, right? So grunge. Sam's Smells Like Teen Spirit. I'm not sure if that really is Nirvana's true grunge, but that movement was really taking place, and a bit of hip hop and rap as well. That was becoming really mainstream, which is great because Pat chose a hip hop / rap song for his. So taking in those two things into account, because that they were huge movements, the grunge and hip hop into the mainstream. So for that reason, I thought it was really apt for my best single to be "From a Distance" by Bette Midler.
It's one of my favourite honourable mentions.
Which, how can you go wrong with "From a Distance"? I feel like it was a bit too old for us to sort of sing ironically as karaoke. But had we been 6 or 7 years, so our ironic karaoke songs like Backstreet Boys and that sort of thing. But had we been 5 or 6 years old, I guarantee you we'd be banging out "From a Distance" by Bette Midler at K-Bar.
Simon, you would have sung this at Batoni Central. I sung this at Batoni Central.
Maybe.
Primary school, we belted it out.
Oh, there's only one way to sing it, and it's belted out.
I have to say, you absolutely sold me on your lead, and I was like, "Oh, he's quite serious tonight." No, he's right. He's spot on. Yeah, that is where they got some mainstream success. It was not in a way.
Simon's sell of hip hop and rap coming into its own in '91 made me look at my honourable mentions and consider changing my pick.
Ooh.
But I won't.
Well, just before we move to you, Bob, one thing I did learn in my research of this is that that's not a Bette Midler original. Some random released it in like 86 or 88 or something, and they got nowhere with it. And then Midler released it in 91 and just set the world on fire with it.
Yeah, fair. She would.
Sean, looking forward to your call here.
Yeah, well, I was torn between two, and my tier was about, I think there's a song I probably prefer of the two, but thinking about the overall impact that each song that I was tossing up between had, I leant towards the one that probably more encompassed 91 and the movement, the grunge movement, even though, again, it's like Smells Like Teen Spirit. It's not necessarily the most grungy song, but so my pick is Losing My Religion.
Yes.
Track.
Yes.
Sure.
Well, considering I've heard of that and not of Pat's one, that's a good one.
You should give it a listen. I reckon you'll be down with it.
I'll run through a couple honourable mentions that I noted, and you guys can just add any if you have them. In the interest of, we're going to do album first. Apologies.
We do.
Apologies. Album. Reverse order, Simon.
Yeah, I was really excited about Best Album. And I'm going to go with a homegrown album. And it's an album that Sam and I grew up with. And I hope I've picked his album. But it's Woodface, the third studio album released by Crowded House.
Absolutely ripper. Not my pick, but very good.
I'm just going to tell you some of the hits on this album. 4 Seasons in One Day. It's Only Natural. All at Your Feet. And Weather With You. And those are all absolute bangers from quite a little known album worldwide. And every other song on this album, I can assure you, is a banger. One of the great lines of all time is from Whispers and Moans. And we all know about this because we all caught taxis, very early in the morning on Courtney Place. But there's a great line that says, "I hear this town, it never goes to sleep. And I will catch the taxi driver weeping like a wounded beast." And I can imagine many taxi drivers doing this after the terrible yarns we subjected them to at the age of 18 and 19. But yeah, that's my pick. Woodface by Crowded House. Fantastic.
I like that's an album, a CD that every house you went into in the 90s, it was in the rack.
Yeah.
That's an excellent choice.
The album cover looked almost like the mask from The Mask. Jim Carrey, that thing that he puts on his face.
Loki's mask.
Yeah, before it goes on his face. Yep.
Excellent. Sellers.
This was probably my closest call for all of these. And I had to go. I was picking between Pearl Jam's 10 and Nirvana's Nevermind. And I went with Nevermind, even though I like 10 more now. I just remember Nevermind being a lot bigger as a kid, growing up in the 90s. And basically, if you grew up as a kid in the 90s in the hut and you could play guitar at all, the first thing anyone asked you was, can you play Smells Like Teen Spirits?
Like
so that pipped for me. Just
like we talked
those
about
memories.
Woodface being on every New Zealand family's CD rack. Nevermind has one of the most iconic album covers ever. Anyone can picture that. Sammy.
Yeah, I do love Woodface. But given we don't have a large New Zealand audience, we're mainly in, America, seems to like our podcast. No, I went with Metallica, aka the Black Album.
Excellent.
I'm not a big Metallica fan. I do like some of their songs, but just from a historical point of view, I don't know whether it could be wrong in saying it's considered their most successful album or best album. Some rippers: Enter Sandman, The Unforgiven, Nothing Else Matters, Wherever I Roam. Some of my favourites of theirs on there, and I think that probably got to be up there for me.
Definitely my first Metallica album, and still my favourite as well. Interesting fact about that album, I'm not sure if it was the producer, but so obviously if you've listened to Metallica at all, a lot of their albums before that are very fast, heavy metal, and there's quite a few slower ones on the Black Album, and I don't want to say it was the producer and be wrong, but they changed who was helping them produce the music, and it was actually someone who'd worked with Motley Crue, and they were really against it because obviously Motley Crue was more of that sort of pop rock, glam rock, as I think you'd call it, but they did work together and produce that album, and one of the greatest albums of all time.
Yeah, that's my best album.
Yep. So my best album, probably to the surprise of no one, is U2's Achtung Baby.
Ugh.
An absolutely phenomenal album. After really cracking it in '87 with the Joshua Tree, which is the greatest album of all time, a bit of a lull, and then a real sort of reinvention of the band, slightly heavier sounds, but also probably most famously the song One. They recorded the album in Berlin for a bit of a change of scenery, and honestly, it's a journey. It's one of those albums where you listen it from the first song to the last song, you feel like you're going on some sort of ride, and it's very, very good. And I know that heaps of people don't like U2, but they're wrong because that album's awesome.
Yeah, for Bono to do that also while simultaneously being the largest turd in the whole world is tremendous effort.
It's a feat.
Tremendous effort.
I never said Bono was a good bloke. Right, I'll go through a couple of honourable mentions, and I'm happy for other people to chime in or add. So the actual number one song, according to the Billboard Top 100 Songs of 1991, was Bryan Adams' "Everything I Do It For You."
I do it for you. I think you should have broken into song there, Sean. Apparently you have at a party or two.
I think my favourite thing about that song is that there are actual brackets, like in the title of the song, right?
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
With the top 100 Billboard songs in front of me, I can confirm that 5 songs actually have brackets in the top 20.
Oh, I thought you were counting Mariah Carey songs because there's a lot of them.
She's all over it, eh? Yeah, and I wonder if there's. I mean, Bryan Adams was hugely popular late 80s and through the 90s, but also that was the main song released with Kevin Costner's Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Mm.
So I do wonder if that
Alright.
plays into that. Very sultry scene with him and Maid Marian.
That's something I did, just as an aside, that's something I did notice while doing research for this is there's a lot of crossovers, like you mentioned with the music in the film, but particularly the film and gaming.
Yeah, heaps of
so-
games based on films.
Yeah, heaps and heaps,
Really?
sometimes on 2 different platforms, like 2 different games.
I noticed that as well, but I don't want to mention those particular games because they're going to come
I
up.
won't. I will not. But yeah. So, honourable mention. Sorry, for song, I did have From a Distance. I did have Losing My Religion, REM, and Under the Bridge, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
I had a couple of albums that came up, so I took them up. Nevermind and what was your album?
Blood, Sex, Sugar Magic must have been that.
That's on mine.
Yep.
That's Under the Bridge, right?
And Suck My Kiss, Give It Away is on that album as well.
Yeah. A couple of other mentions. So the album Blue Lines by Massive Attack was really the launching pad for that sort of sub-pop, trance, dance genre. And actually a very good album if you're into that kind of music. Cypress Hill album, including the song that I almost picked, How I Could Just Kill a Man. Just must have listened to that song a trillion times in my teens, both that version and the Rage Against the Machine version. Absolutely fizzed for it. Couple of songs that came out that year that have probably had interesting lasting effects: Black or White by Michael Jackson and Summertime by DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince.
Oh, speaking of which, their 4th studio album, Home Base. That's outrageous.
Nutty.
Any other honourable mentions, team?
I just want to say that that's amazing that Jazzy Jeff kept coming back after being thrown out of that house by Uncle Phil so many times. Like, to release 4 albums after that, it's amazing.
I just put Tupacalypse Now, the debut album of Tupac.
Very, very good. Right, to the film section. And so we've just got Best Animated Film and Best Film. And I will allow people to say their best animated film is their best film. That'd be wrong, but that's okay. So we'll start with animated. And this time we'll start with Simon.
Yeah, no, I've got nothing for this. I haven't seen any of the films that I looked at that were released in 1991, so I feel like I can't really make a comment if I haven't seen them. So I'll shove it over to you, Pat.
That was a good person to start with.
I didn't care for this category either. Land Forward Time came out in '88. That's the only good one from back then, and they didn't start making good animated movies till much later.
Thank you, Pat.
I may have got this wrong, but
I'm upset.
Beauty and the Beast, 1991.
Beauty and the Beast, 1991.
Never seen it.
Absolute ripper.
What a movie.
We should have you and I should have started this conversation.
Yeah,
Bob.
I can't believe that you guys did research and didn't, like, even if you didn't want to pick Beauty and the Beast, which is
I've
just...
genuinely never seen it. Genuinely never. I'm not. I promise it's not so much some.
Mate, it is good.
film,
I
right?
have no idea if I've seen it or not.
Never seen it.
If I have, I can't remember it.
It's probably top 5 Disney animated films. It's very good.
It's really fantastic. And look, the reenactment, the one with Emma Watson's not bad, but this
remake,
absolutely quality. You have seen the remake?
No, there was a very niche Final Fantasy joke for all of our free.
Hope you like that one long.
Yeah. Yeah, Sean's played it. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. I guess it's better. I don't know when the story was actually written. Do you know, Sean?
Nah. It's a tale as old as time, isn't it?
Yeah, that was the only one in the category, and it won it easily.
Yeah. So best film won't be starting with Simon again. Pat.
This one, there's a lot to choose from here. This is, I think, best film and TV series. I don't think I'm going to disagree with anyone's because there's so many good picks. But I went for one that sort of I had the strongest memories of and was biggest at the time. As a kid in the 90s, I'm gone with Hook.
Oh,
Yes,
no.
yes.
Not what Sean
R.I.P.
picked.
Rob Williams.
Yes, Pat.
It's on my
Yes,
list,
Pat.
though. It's definitely on the list.
Jack.
And I want my war.
It was fantastic.
Hey, it's no Shmee is such a good character.
Can I just
Tremendous.
jump in there? Sorry, I know you're hosting, Bob, but just want to reiterate that is my pick as well. Hook. Dustin Hoffman's finest hour, as well as Glenn Close's finest hour.
Mm. Fair.
If anybody knows who Glenn Close plays in that movie.
We're on the same track. We're 2 from 2 on this category. Nothing for animated. Followed up with Hook.
It's normally you and me that mug off Bob together, Pat.
I loved Hook so much that when I lived in Kent, which is very close to London, I visited the statue that that Robin Williams, or Peter Pan, as he is, wakes up under in one of the parks in London.
With Shmee snow sweeping.
Yeah, exactly. With Smee, Bob Hoskins, I think, is the actor who.
It is Bob. It was Bob. Fun fact: the early '90s X-Men movie that never happened. Bob Hoskins was going to play Wolverine.
That would have been a bad choice.
That would have been a terrible choice.
But Smee, great,
so good.
great film, and Pat, you were spot on there, mate. Hook's my number 1 too.
Sean, can I guess yours?
Are you going to say is yours Hook as well, or?
Nah, it's not. And it's not your one either. And your one's Terminator 2.
Judgment Day.
Good. It's a good one.
Go on, talk about it, Sean. I've watched it once and didn't really like it.
Oh, that hurts, man.
I've ever heard anyone say that.
It's interesting. I'll tell you what's interesting about me picking T2 is that I am one of the few people that maintains the first Terminator is better than T2, but T2 is the most 90st action flick ever, and it's everything you'd want. It's Arnold. It's one-liners. Ed Furlong. It's maybe like revolutionary graphics on the T1000.
I feel like I need to watch it again.
Oh, it's so good.
It won an Oscar, didn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously. The return of what's her name? What's Sarah Connor's the actor?
Don't ask me.
Anyway, she goes from being in the first one to being the damsel in distress to being like maybe the most badass female action hero ever. She's just it is so good. I only have one complaint, and it commits a time travel fallacy, but we won't get into that. I honestly thought everyone would pick T2. I'm quite shocked. Although I understand Hook is a phenomenal film, and I'm happy to concede to it, but I'm still surprised.
Run Home Jack.
Run Home Jack.
So my best film is neither of those two, and I'll just lay it out on the table. I don't think this director is that good. This director is lauded in the film community by many, and look, good director, but not as good as he is cracked up to be. But I love Reservoir Dogs.
Oh yeah,
it's my favourite film of his.
I thought you were doing a misdirect and you were going back to T2 and mugging off Jim Cameron.
No, I love Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs. It's my favourite film of his by quite a long way. I'm surprised it hasn't. It was neither of yours, but can't disagree with Hook.
Won't disagree with Hook. So Hook wins. Honourable mentions.
There's some good honourables. I got a few honourables. Point Break.
Yeah, I've got Point Break.
Hot Shots. Start of all those spoof type films. The Doors film, which is fantastic, and
very
Drop
good.
Dead Fred. I kind of thought it was an 80s film, but it came out in 91.
Yeah, I saw that pop up as well. I was very surprised.
My sister was a big fan of that one.
I guess you'd say What can make me feel this way? Oh,
What's that one?
Oh, we're all gonna join in. Yeah. Have you got that in your notes? And looks like everyone joins in with the mic.
Is that bit you were talking about at the start?
Hey, look, I'm a big Vader fan. My girl was definitely up there on the honourable mentions as well as Hook.
Yeah.
I had the other two I had in the honourable mentions were JFK, which was a very long movie that I loved, and it's got a great scene in Seinfeld.
I've got JFK.
And I feel like one
Is that Cosner?
It is.
JFK?
Yep. And the other one that I feel like was just on TV all the time when we were kids is The Addams Family. Really enjoyed that movie as a
I've got
kid.
Addams Family, and I think that's a good movie.
Yeah.
Very good.
Don't know if it's a good movie because I haven't seen it for 25 years, but I feel like it was on TV too, just like pretty regularly when we were kids.
I think you're right there.
Got a couple others to mention. Boys in the Hood,
Mm.
The Rocketeer, Kevin Costner's big 91 year, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Obviously, this is a little bit before he ruined his career with Waterworld.
Good arcade game though, Waterworld.
And not a bad stunt show at Movie World.
Yeah, it is.
And I'm surprised this didn't come up because it won the most Oscars, Silence of the Lambs.
Yes, I forgot to write that down.
Yeah.
I think one. Keep going, Bob, and I've got a point to make after you finish.
Yes, and just a couple of animated films that I thought might have popped up. The Dragon Ball Z feature film Cooler's Revenge. And a movie I haven't seen, but I wanted to bring up because that sounds incredible. And I only looked at the cover. It's called Rover Dangerfield. It's a big dog, and it's voiced by Rodney Dangerfield.
I immediately wanted to watch it. I immediately wanted to watch it when I saw that.
I might watch that tonight.
The point I wanted to make about that, and it's been made before, like it's sort of it's not a original point, but you kind of realised it was sort of reinforced when you did the research and you looked at the films released in 1991. You're like, oh yeah, that was a big one. Oh yep, that was big. That was big. That was big. Whereas I feel like if you looked at the films of 2022 or 2023, 30 years from now, you wouldn't remember almost anything. And I feel like it's just emblematic of that move towards TV and away from movies as the sort of the number one medium. And I was sort of reminded of what a big deal movies were compared to now.
Interesting, isn't it? You certainly people will look back at this time right now and probably talk about Avatar 2 for good or for ill. But also, we are coming out of COVID, so making films has been quite difficult, and but it is interesting as well. Like the last 10 years, the highest grossing films are all just superhero movies, right?
Yeah.
And although and Pat and I are both big fans of them, I do think you're right. 20 to 30 years from now, they'll all just blurred into one. It's not like it was in the, like the 70s and 80s with Star Wars, where it's like, there's other sci-fi stuff, but it's Star Wars. Star Wars is the thing. Yep. People will go, the Marvel movies, but will they actually name some?
No, there's a million.
Unless you're a huge Marvel fan, probably not.
Exactly.
I'm not a big Star Wars fan, but I can name those, just because there weren't that many of them. And I think it was as I say, just movies were just a bigger deal, right? They just were. It was.
I think you'll find The Empire Strikes Back is actually the greatest film ever made. Right, television. So we've got animated series and we've got series. And
Simon, did you do animated series or did you just leave it out like the other?
I'll be shocked if Simon hasn't picked the same animated series as me.
Let's just organically do this podcast, without,
And we did clarify that you could pick a series based on the season that was released in 91, or if you wanted to, something that started in 91. Yep. Everyone's reasons are their own and nobody cares, and we're right and you're wrong. So let's start with animated. And let's start with Pat.
I, for both animated series and series, I stuck with series that debuted in 91 just to cut it down, because the honourable mentions in this category could go on for a wee while, and just went for what was probably the biggest impact. As a kid in the 90s, my best animated series is Rugrats.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy.
It was just also just on all the time as well. So it's definitely big memories, and any series from the 90s, definitely early 90s, even late 80s, you've got to have that big draw card. You've got to have a really good theme tune, and it definitely had that. I think if any kid in the 90s gets a xylophone put in front of them at any point, you're trying to work out the Rugrats theme song.
Absolutely.
Ta-da!
Luke's got one, and I'm doing it.
Yeah, mine was also Rugrats. Both my best animated series and best series I stuck with shows that started in 1991, and I left my honourable mentions as shows that were still going. They started earlier, but they had a certain season that was good in that time. Rugrats. Anyone up for an impromptu character draft?
Let's go.
I love it. I'm keen.
I was a Chucky fan myself.
You know I was. He was a ginger with glasses.
Sean's quickly Googling how do snake drafts work again.
Well,
Yeah, Rugrats for me.
Also a big fan of Old Man Pickles, though.
Was it Phil Pickles?
I feel like it was
Sure.
Stew Pickles.
No, I thought it was thinking Stew.
Yeah, research that, would you? It went till 2006. Now, I'm not saying that Rugrats was good for all those years, because it definitely jumped the shark with other characters being involved.
Younger kids.
Yeah, just like, brothers.
You're not a big Dill Pickles fan?
And not a big... just more of a Phil and Lil fan. But yeah, that's my Rugrats, 91 to 2006. Good effort.
On.
Yeah, so 4 films. My best animated film was Nothing. So was Pat's. Pat and my best film was
pick.
Hook. And Pat and my best animated series was Rugrats.
Yeah, boy.
So it's amazing, really. All 3 of us, and it just kind of shows you was always on. I think it was really good because, like, some of these shows that came out were for very, very young kids, and we probably watched them when we were very, very young kids. But I can't remember this watching it as like a 9 and 10-year-old and still finding it really funny. I feel like it's a bit arrogant to say you get adult humor as a 10-year-old, but I feel like there was definitely a few jokes that were in there for adults as well. For
Rugrats is definitely one of those shows that was riddled with adult entertainment as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, clearly Rugrats is the winner, but it wasn't my pick. I picked Doug.
Yeah.
That's an honourable.
What a show! Yeah. What a show! Can't argue with that.
I was obsessed. I loved it. And between seasons, Skeeter went through puberty and came back all gangly with a broken voice. I was I'm relating to this. Not in 91, but whenever I was watching those reruns.
Did I get bullied at Hutt Valley High for looking a lot like Skeeter? Sure.
Yeah, Doug was on my honourable mention.
This is a sore point. Should we have not brought this up? Do you want us to cut this bit out?
It's a badge of honor. It's a badge of honor, really.
Yeah, it should be.
Right.
Who didn't have a crush on Patty Mayonnaise?
Doug was good.
Doug was great.
Similar to Rugrats, I feel like, as well, right? Like, we watched a little bit, even though it debuted in 91, I wasn't watching Doug in 91. I was definitely watching it when I was like 9 or 10, and quite a few good adult jokes, I assume, in there as well.
I think it worked quite well with that kind of age bracket too, because, Doug had his crush, and, that they were school kids doing quite school kiddie things.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, just best series. Let's start with Samuel.
Yeah, again, I picked one from that started in 1991, and there were a lot of TV. From the look of it, TV was really kicking off, as someone mentioned earlier. There are some great seasons of other shows that were
But it's
in their
still-
infancy,
There you go. Yeah.
but it still does not hold a candle to my best series of 1991, Home Improvement.
Oh, what?
Yeah, Tim Allen, Al Borland, my personal favourite character, and a bit of Wilson over the fence. Can't beat a bit of Home Improvement.
I read a fact about Wilson today that Tim Allen wrote the character of Wilson to not be able to see quite over the fence as an homage to his childhood when he was trying to look over the fence to talk to his neighbours.
Nice.
That's adorable.
Mm. Let's go to you, Simon.
Yeah, I didn't actually pick one for best series
For
overall.
fuck's sake.
I just like to defer till honourable mentions because I just feel like, can I just explain myself a little bit? I did my research, and 91. So I asked Bob, Sean, does it have to be the series started 91, or can it be an existing series and you choose a season, which Bob alluded to earlier? And I just couldn't really pick Seinfeld or The Simpsons at that point because they hadn't quite hit their straps. Really, they're showing potential, but that wasn't the golden era at all. And as much as I love Home Improvement and Doug and whatnot, I just couldn't quite bring myself to pick those shows. But I've got a few honourable mentions that I'll mention later.
No balls.
Yeah,
That's right. This is New Zealand, not Australia, and you have the democratic right not to vote.
You can't take a swing at everything. Home Improvement was also mine. Holds up too. I watched a fair bit of it when mate of ours, Paddy Howden, came back from the UK and lived with me for a little while, about 6 or 7 years ago, and we watched them all again, basically. But it was the breakout role for the 90s heartthrob and JTT.
We need to talk about
Tim
that.
Allen being such a massive 90s icon. You'd have to say this is his most iconic role as well. So, Home Improvement just sat above everything else for me.
I'm a secondary school teacher at an all-girls school, and I feel like if you tried to explain to my students in 2023 that, like, the biggest 90s teen heartthrob, you describe me as like a 5'4" chubby kid, and that was like the ultimate teen heartthrob, they'd just have a laugh.
Yeah, long hair though.
That was
also
JT.
a strange conversation to be having with your students, but
Very.
It always goes down well when they watch Romeo and Juliet because Leo's a real babe in that film.
And that is a great film.
Mm-hmm.
My pick was, I adhered to my own rules of doesn't have to have debuted in 91. I picked something that actually debuted at the end of 90 though, so it was still in its first season.
Fair.
In 91, I picked The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yeah, nice.
very good.
Love the pick. Cheating a bit, but love the pick.
Why?
Not cheating at all. Take it all back.
Because I looked it up.
What a retraction.
I looked at the same. I had the same thing as Simon. I looked at things like I looked at Seinfeld, and you get season 2 and season 3, and there's some pretty awesome episodes, but it's not quite where it should be. And there's a few other things, but yeah, The Fresh Prince. I watched that religiously, and it is one of those shows where the first season, like literally from episode 1, you're like, this is mint.
Yeah,
Also, the season 2, the original, the good actors and actresses are still on it. There's no changes yet.
Mm.
You're
that be right?
Not a fan of light-skinned Vivian, Sam.
Definitely a fan of original Vivian and original. Is it Hillary's the original, or is it Ashley?
What? Hillary and Ashley changed? Come on, never.
I don't know if they changed. I thought it was just Aunt Viv. I thought that's why in Hollywood they
is it just Viv?
When a character gets replaced and looks inexplicably different, they call it getting Aunt Viv'd.
Yeah, definitely just Aunt Viv.
That's good.
Apparently, Don Cheadle said that to Terrence Howard when he took on the role of the Marvel character. He's just like, I'm sorry that I Aunt Viv'd you.
That's real good.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Karen Parsons and Tatiana M. Ali were not replaced in their roles in Fresh Prince.
Yeah, maybe I just got a bit excited because the Aunt Viv change was striking.
Striking. I'll quickly run through some honourable mentions, mainly things that just debuted in 91. The dawn of adult cartoons, Ren and Stimpy.
Yep, that's on mine.
I guess live action puppet show Dinosaurs.
Got the mama.
The great cartoon Toxic Crusaders. Tailspin, which only had one season.
Oh.
The great family sitcom Step by Step.
Oh,
Yes.
Show. Day by day.
And a couple of other honourable mentions. Cheers got the most Emmys. That was 91 was the first year that The Simpsons aired in New Zealand.
Wow.
And the episode of The Apartment in season 2 of Seinfeld is an absolute banger.
That's a great list, Bob.
Harry and the Hendersons.
Very good.
To add to that, I've got Where's Wally,
Oh,
which Sam and I
Mike,
definitely had a VHS of, and now my 5-year-old son James loves. And there's a random Wizard Whitebeard character on that who's like a blatant Rodney Dangerfield ripoff.
he keeps popping up.
Yeah, but the voice of the Rodney Dangerfield ripoff, aka Wizard Whitebeard, is Ray Romano's brother from Everybody Loves Raymond.
Wow.
Very random. A couple of three other shows. Jerry Springer debuted.
Oh, that's what I got too.
Which is a quintessential 90s show. Another one that was introduced to me by long-time mentioner on the podcast, Cam Porlick, is Bottom, which was a British sort of off-the-wall show starring Adrian Edmondson and Rick Mayall, who were sort of responsible for the young ones in the 80s. But Bottom's another very funny show. And another show that no one would have heard of, apart from probably Sam and I think it was on What Now briefly, and it was only one season. It was called James Bond Jr.,
I've seen James Bond Jr.
which was just one of the worst concepts for a show of all time. You know, James Bond, who one of the main thing he does is just, get with attractive women, and there's all of a sudden a James Bond Jr. who's like 10 years old solving crimes. Just a terrible, terrible show that would never exist now.
It's not James Pond by any chance.
Not James Pond 3, no.
All right. Gaming.
Yeah, boy.
Now
What a year.
I need to put this out there. Sam, Simon,
Yep.
you need to control yourselves for this section. We're already running a little bit late.
I reckon we've both got the same one. Same best
But
game.
your honourable mentions list is probably 400 long.
Hey, we're going late tonight, Sean. We're going late tonight, man.
I'm going to you first, Pat.
Yeah, I don't know if I was as much into gaming early on. A lot of these games were a bit earlier. So I went with one that I have the best memories of, and it was going into either Time Out or Time Zone. Can't remember what it was called at the time. It was at the front of Hoyt Cinema in the Hut.
Yep.
And playing the Simpsons game, the beat 'em up game. You're just traveling from left to right.
What a game.
Some good fond memories of that. Button bashing away. It was you basically had to go and save Maggie, who had been kidnapped, and each of the characters had weapons. Bart had a skateboard, Lisa had a skipping rope, Marge had a vacuum cleaner, and Homer has a fist.
Marge was dominant. Marge was dominant with that vacuum cleaner, right?
Is that your best? That's your best?
Yep. The Simpsons. Yep.
Nice.
Sammy?
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
Mine's
I've got a
probably-
guess for the Blandfords too, but I won't put it out there. We'll just see.
I reckon you've got it.
Yes, sir.
From conversations we've had, Sean, would you like to guess?
Monkey Island 2.
Monkey Island 2, Lee Chuck's Revenge.
Correct. On both counts, Bob.
That is definitely the best game. And look, there are a whole lot of really, really good games. This game is amazing to play. It's amazing. It was amazing to play when I played it. It's amazing to play now. And it just holds up fantastically. I don't even know what platform it would have been on at that point. But we played it on PC, I believe. Just a fantastic game. It's hard to beat a lot of these, but it's actually rated really highly by If you go to any website where they rate games, this is one of the top games rated.
Many of the podcasts that I listen to steal ideas from for ours, when they talk about gaming, talk about the Monkey Island series.
Yeah. Well, it's I don't know if it started, but it was definitely very popular. But definitely, it was huge in the point and click game. We used to play Day of the Tentacle, which came out similar time. I think a year. I thought it was 1990, but it might have been 92. The original Day of the Tentacle came out in the 80s.
Maniac Mansion.
Yes. Lots of good honourable mentions, which I'll get to shortly.
And yours was the same, Simon. Do you want to talk about it too, or?
Nah, I don't. Great game, and I'll save other chat for honourable mentions because I've got a long list.
My pick was Sonic the Hedgehog. I played it non-stop on my Sega Master System. I absolutely fizzed for it. And then when I got my Mega Drive and it was built in, I still kept playing it. And, there were lots of other games on the list that I really liked. But, if you're thinking about hours contributed to something, Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, I think the Mega Drive was my first one, so I never had a Master System.
Master System had Alex Kidd built in, and that is also a great game, but it didn't come out in 91. And Miracle World, I think you'll find he was.
Yeah, that was the paper rock scissors. Do.
Absolutely. And no randomizer, just memorize what to do and you're safe.
Just memorize. Yep.
All right. Honourable mentions. Right. Let's Pat go first, then me, and then if we don't say anything that you two say, me and Pat will go get a drink.
Yeah, nice.
My honourables out of ones I played and could remember playing: Duke Nukem, Lemmings, and Street Fighter 2.
Oh,
nice.
So I did want to talk about Street Fighter 2 because obviously that was an arcade game and it was around for a long time. But you guys might remember there was that small little arcade and that little, I guess, food court in between Valley and the bowling.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And Street Fighter 2 would have crowds of 20 plus people watching guys just get their way through.
That's good.
The only other honourable mention that I have that hasn't been said already is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time, which is very much of the ilk of that Simpsons side-scroller arcade game. Great game. Awesome game. We had it at Valley and my dad had the keys, so he could unlock it and flip the thing, so I'd have unlimited credits.
What a lucky man. Lucky
Still
boy.
didn't clock it.
I remember. I distinctly remember when a guy told me that if you use the joysticks and press the buttons, you'd do better.
Good tip.
Go on, Sammy.
Nah, you go because you didn't speak at all on best game, and you've got lots of honourable mentions.
So, just want to say that on my honourable mention list, that's already mentioned: The Simpsons by Pat, Lemmings as well. That was mentioned. Sonic. Street Fighter 2, Duke Nukem. So I just want to endorse all of those. Versus the Space Mutants.
Yeah, boy.
Which was a game that Sam and I played a lot of. And that was...
No. Just want to set the record straight. You played a lot of. I watched.
Yeah. A bit of older sibling bullying going on there. It was basically this. Aliens came down from Earth and Bart had to rescue Springfield from them, pretty much. Great game, Bart vs. the Space Mutants. Streets of Rage as well. Not sure if you guys remember.
Yeah, I remember Streets of Rage.
That was another great game. Final Fantasy IV, and I haven't played this one, but all my Nintendo nerd friends say that Zelda: A Link to the Past was another great game. Was released in 1991. Just before Sam takes over the mantle there, I think even though obviously now in the last 20 years has been an exciting time for video games because of technological advances, I just think so many bright minds must have been working in video games at this point. So many bright minds are working at it because it was literally this untapped territory where So you had films. Films have been around for 60 years. Books have been around for longer. TV shows have been around for 30, 40 years at this point. Video games are almost brand new. And it was this... You look back and it's laughable to say they had endless possibilities because of how old they look and the graphics and whatnot. But to the brightest minds, I think it did represent a limitless sort of possibility. And you look at these games, and I think for me, I'm just reminded by, man, some very, very bright people were in the industry at this point, and some really, again, seems laughable now because they are so old, they had limitations, but I think some really smart people worked on these games.
I think you're right. I think that what's really interesting about it as well is like one game would change gaming, and then you would get a plethora of games that followed that
Copycat.
system.
Yep.
You know, like yeah.
Like platform games, and then I think Lemmings would have been one of the earlier games of platforms. That a lot came from that. You know, your Terry's Big Adventures.
Sure.
Are the only two that weren't mentioned by anybody else. I had all of those. Plus, I haven't played it, but I've heard many good things about the Tecmo Super Bowl. Specifically about how good Bo Jackson was. And just, I know you'll appreciate this, but maybe my gran will appreciate this. Free Cell 1991.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
That's good.
Which personally I prefer Free Cell, or maybe not prefer it to Solitaire, but it's such a good change from Solitaire and your hearts.
I'm a Hearts fan myself. But...
to give Free Cell a go, but yeah, that's me.
Right. In the interest of knowing that the Oscars drag, and maybe this is too, we'll get into sports. So we've got Best Sporting Moment and Best Sporting Team.
Are we in part 2 yet?
Yeah, we're well into it. Simon, you're a sports passionate man.
We all are, really.
But I think you in particular will have chosen a really good sporting moment.
Yeah, so this is going to be pretty disappointing to every single audience that we have, New Zealand and international. It's going to bring up a lot of scars. But we have to be fair on this podcast. We have to actually give what we believe to be the most iconic moment, regardless of how painful it might be.
How do you mute disgraceful.
So I think in the 1991 Rugby World Cup semi-final, David Campese turning John Kirwan inside and out by just running straight. Like, I've analysed this clip, and John Kirwan was a superstar. And Campo just runs for the corner, and Kirwan turns left, he turns right, he turns left, he turns right again, and Campo's gone into the corner. And it's a great moment. And he sets up another amazing try for Tim Horan in that match. He just gives like a no-look pass behind the shoulder and makes you think they really screwed him in the Jonah Lomu's rugby game, because what a special talent he was. So, yeah, my moment is David Campese turning John Kirwan inside and out to score in the corner in the semi-final.
Didn't even make my honourable mentions. All right. Sam, lift the mood.
Got to be MJ's first title. I researching this, there were quite scarce actually the sporting moments and teams. So yeah, I've gone with MJ's first title over the Lakers 4-1 comprehensive. Once he'd got through the East, it was a cakewalk really. Yeah,
it was a bit lean in terms of like the number of sort of moments and teams, but the ones that are there are pretty awesome. My top moment is Test cap debut of Inga the Winger by Inga Tuigamala in the World Cup, becoming the first Samoan-born rugby player to represent the All Blacks in a Test match. It probably changed the way we saw the All Blacks for many, many years to come, and New Zealand as a whole as well. As part of
didn't know that.
Islands. So, like he actually played in midfield, I think. we actually didn't have a great World Cup, but for what it meant for the All Blacks and New Zealand in general, I thought that would be my number one moment.
That's incredible. Right, my moment, and I honestly thought it was going to come up, and I'm a little bit disappointed, in particular in both you, Simon and Sam. So my sporting moment is kind of two rolled into one, but
I know what you're going to say.
Record partnership 467 runs between Andrew Jones and Martin Crowe scoring at the time New Zealand's highest Test innings score of 299.
Yeah, I've got that on my honourable mentions.
What a stand.
Against the Lankins at the base. Doesn't get better than that.
Again,
Wow.
I'm playing into our wider audience, not just our New Zealand audience.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to educate them on what happened on February 4th, 1991 and why they should go and watch those highlights.
Where do those two blokes live? America.
Team. Sporting team. This is hard. I found this hard. But then it sort of became clear because it was quite hard. So we'll start with you, Pat.
Yeah, I thought there was one obvious one, but it went in Sam's moments. Team had to be Chicago Bulls. Winning the first title of their dynasty. Everyone sat home and watched the Netflix series during COVID lockdown. So, I think that easily goes down as the best team.
Same here.
Same here.
So your moment and your team are both the Bulls.
Yep.
So we all pick the Bulls,
Loves
and it's
it.
very likely for every 6 years of the 90s that they win, they're going to win this category.
Well, maybe.
Disagree.
They'll get two of them. It'll be the comeback one and this one.
Yeah,
And maybe the last one.
And maybe 1993 when he beat Barkley and the Suns.
Yeah,
Okay.
I went through all the other ones: hockey, baseball, and football, and nothing really could come close to the Bulls. So I had to pick the Bulls.
Right, I'll rattle off a couple of honourable mentions and you guys can chime in. The return of South Africa to international sport from apartheid.
Yep.
Cool.
Penrith Panthers win their first NRL title.
Royce Simmons.
Monica Seles wins 3 out of 4 Grand Slams, finishing number 1, ending Steffi Graf's run of 186 weeks at number 1.
It's a lot of weeks.
That's outrageous.
And finally, my last one was Tiger Woods won his first ever title, the US Junior Amateur title, at the age of 15.
Wow.
Anyone else?
That's outstanding.
Magic Johnson announces he's got AIDS.
Yeah, that's actually going to come up again in a different section for me, but not with Magic Johnson.
Yes. Simon?
No, I've got nothing.
The first Women's FIFA Soccer World Cup.
Won by the US.
Yeah, they'd had previous tournaments, but not sanctioned, apparently.
It wasn't the famous one, though, That wasn't the Mia Hamm.
Take the
one.
shirt off.
It wasn't that one, was it?
Nah. And the other team I thought of, a bit of a niche basketball team, but the Duke 1991 basketball team.
I had that on my. Yeah, I did actually have that. I didn't want to mention it because I.
Bobby Hurley,
Hill?
Christian Leitner, and Grant Hill.
And friend of the podcast, Cherokee Parks.
I think Krzyzewski was their coach at that point still too.
Yep, definitely.
All right, let's get into our last section. And I'll be honest, doing research on the history section, a lot of the things that come up are quite negative, as is the way with history. But we sort of said any real life event or moment outside of, I guess, what we've already discussed. And I'll start with you, Simon.
Well, hopefully this counts, Bob, because you kind of touched on it earlier with the sport, but I think it does count, and it's the end, and it's actually a positive thing, the end of apartheid in South Africa. I think, I'm just piggybacking on what you said. I think obviously it was a big deal from a humanitarian standpoint, but selfishly from a sports standpoint, because we're all big sports fans, it allowed us to witness, people like Francois Pienaar and Chester Williams and Alan Donald and Farney de Villiers, who we all loved copying his bowling action. And
I was more of a Paul Adams copier myself.
Sure, loved the old look down leg spin. But yeah, I think that was a huge deal for New Zealanders being able to watch us play South African rugby and cricket. And obviously there are far more bigger reasons that's a big deal, obviously. But just from our selfish perspective, that was quite a big deal.
Coincidentally, and certainly on a more negative note, Nelson Mandela's wife, Winnie, was arrested in 1991 for kidnapping 4 people.
We sure that happened?
Who knows? Sam, your turn.
Under history, we've got the category best real life event / moment. And as you mentioned, a lot of it is quite negative. So I wonder whether it's almost just like significant life event / moment. Although mine is, maybe you could say this is a good thing or a bad thing. Got a few things here, but I just went a little bit, I don't know if you've got this. The first year the World Wide Web came to life / open to the public.
Excellent.
Yeah, I've seen that one there.
We wouldn't be podcasting without it.
We would not.
We'd be selling tapes on the street.
God, for all those nerds.
Eddie?
I've got this one, I suppose, proof that women can really do anything men can do, and just as well. January 91, serial killer Eileen Wuornos is arrested. Which is then, takes a big place in history after Charlize Theron played her in the movie Monster and won an Oscar for it.
You sure did.
Nice. That was my best moment.
Good South Africa link too. Charlie.
Yeah.
One of my honourable mentions involves another serial killer, but my choice for the most significant real life event was the KFC conspiracy.
Yeah.
When Kentucky Fried Chicken rebranded officially as KFC, and the world was swept by a conspiracy theory that they had to do that because it wasn't real chickens, it was headless, battery farmed, grown chicken meat.
Madness.
That's great.
That's the best one. Yeah.
That is fantastic.
Honourable mention, I must have been going nuts on the recently launched World Wide Web. Honourable mentions, Jeffrey Dahmer is arrested.
Yep.
I just thought I'd bring up Boris Yeltsin in the fall of the Soviet Union. Pee Wee Herman is also arrested for that awful thing he did.
Was that in 91?
Yeah, that was terrible. He should have never released Pee Wee's Playhouse. Terrible show.
And Freddie Mercury announces that he has AIDS and actually dies the next day.
And died the next day. Yep.
That's outrageous.
Oh, well.
I do have 2 other things that probably only matter to Pat and I. But 1991 is the release of Jim Starlin's The Infinity Gauntlet, which is a massive, wide-sweeping Marvel event that the Avengers movies are based on. And, Sam, we've talked about this before, it's also the release of Chris Claremont and Jim Lee's X-Men #1, still to this day, the highest-selling comic book of all time.
What's that?
X-Men #1.
Oh, X-Men #1.
And which all the cartoon characters' costumes are based off that run.
Nice.
Any other honourable mentions?
I've got one, if no one else has anything. This was just a nutty one. It was nothing really important. But and on April the 14th, thieves stole $500 million worth of paintings from the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. And they were found in an abandoned car less than an hour later.
Oh.
Real pros. But I just thought it was interesting. You'd go to the trouble of stealing 500 mil worth of paintings and then just leave them in the car.
They ever caught?
Don't know. Good question.
Because if they were just in it for the game, then well played.
Yeah, I like that. That's good. Just letting everyone know that they could.
Yeah. Sure. 500 mil. So yeah, that's my honourable mention.
Catch and release, you could say.
Very much like that tale that Alfred tells Bruce in The Dark Knight about the diamond thieves. You guys have seen that movie.
Yeah.
We've only got one section left, and it's just the best 90s thing. And I suppose it should probably come from something we've already said. I forgot to write anything down.
Just before we get to that, I did have a couple of things. Did the Gulf War end
Yes.
in 1991?
Yes.
MC Hammer Dance, 1991.
Yes, I looked that up. The song came out in 90, though.
Yeah, that's weird, eh?
Yeah.
One that tickled that Jason Alexander threatened to quit Seinfeld in that year.
I came across that because he wasn't written into an episode.
Yeah, and he said, if you do that again, I'm out.
What a battler, by the way. But anyway, move on.
Yeah, for the record, he was in every other episode.
Yeah, of course he was. And the one that tickled my fancy was the British government had to clearly define the difference between a cake and a biscuit.
I feel like we must have been to the same website.
It was forced to do this thanks to a high-profile court case. In the end, they published an official ruling that a cake is defined by its propensity to harden over time, whereas a biscuit has a propensity to soften. I don't know. I want to know what the court case was.
Good stuff. How hard would have this been if Google didn't exist?
Oh, don't even bother.
Like a rip into, many discs of Encarta to find out what happened in 1991.
We would have predominantly just done the history section.
And Carter 95 would have been really looked at seriously.
It would have been good that I wasn't 2 at the time.
Right. Do we want to crown an overall champion of 1991?
I think so.
I want to give it to the KFC.
KFC's up there, eh?
That was real good. I hadn't heard about that.
I'm leaning towards I don't know if it's a person or a team, but it was quite unanimous. Whether it be Michael Jordan or the Bulls.
I
agree. You agree?
I agree. I had Bob, like you, I'd written nothing down. But I agree, and I'll explain about why I agree later. But Pat?
I think that's a fair selection. A long-lasting impact. Maybe helped a little bit recently with The Last Dance, but yeah.
I think also helped by the legacy of what's to come. But
yeah,
still,
92 is a chance of being Michael Jordan. Bulls, dream team.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that if you think about the reason I chose that, and I'm just off the cuff here, but like, no American sports team really before this completely took hold of the imagination of the whole world. Okay, the Bird and the Celtics and Magic and the Lakers a bit in the 80s, but I think that was such a huge moment for world sport and just world pop culture, right? I think that there's no American football team or baseball or hockey that really had a worldwide influence like the Bulls' success did in the 90s and created a truly global superstar in Michael Jordan. I think if we've been conscious or subconscious or not, I think that's why we've all chosen it.
Yeah, he was unbelievable in the game, but he was bigger than the game. The branding, everything behind it just became massive. It's like that. There's always that saying of people say about other sports is he's the Michael Jordan of whatever. There's probably really only ever been one.
I'm also in full agreement. Right, well, without further ado, we can wrap this thing up. And I was thinking perhaps a quote from a popular movie. "'Tis true, time does fly, and so do you, I see."
One thing, just on hook. Maggie Smith who plays the grandmother in Hook.
Wendy.
Wendy, how old was Maggie Smith when Hook was released? Can somebody tell me, please? Yes, you got to guess. Don't look it up.
75?
No, 58.
Did they age her up for it? Oh, 'cause she's still around. Yeah, I don't know.
So Maggie Smith was born in 1934.
So she would have been late 50s.
56.
Oh, fuck, I was close.
56. Ridiculous.